Phil, Universes Beyond is a fad, and it's not going to stick around. We're going to remember this era of Magic as not only being kind of cringe, but also as an era of Magic that didn't stick around for as long as we thought it would. Finding the right high-end cards for legacy, vintage, pre-modern, or old-school Magic can be challenging. That's where friends 3-for-1 trading come in.
3-for-1 Trading is one of Europe's top Magic the Gathering retailers with an incredible selection of premium singles, sealed product, and even full sets, all available with free, fast, and secure worldwide shipping.
They add fresh inventory every Wednesday with weekly deals and discounts. So whether you're hunting for that elusive piece of power, a legacy staple, or something spicy for your collection, they've got you covered.
First high-end orders over $500 or 500 euros, use the code EDFREE to get free worldwide shipping.
Check them out now at the number 3, the number 4, the number 1.gg/ED. That link takes you right to the shop and helps support the channel.
Huge thanks to 3-for-1 Trading for supporting the Legacy community. Now back to the show.
I disagree. I think
You disagree?
Well, I think this is the world we're in because I think that this is like they notice that, of course, not everything can be Final Fantasy, but like Lord of the Rings was a Universes Beyond that was their best-selling set of all time, and then Final Fantasy was the best-selling set of all time in before the set even came out, and then even if Spider-Man or any of the other Marvel stuff doesn't match Final Fantasy, like. Yeah, that's okay. I think from their POV, they're like, I understand that they always want more because that's how corporations work. But at the same time, they understand that like not everything can always be better than the thing that was previous because, you know, like, but I don't think that if the service were to the game, sure. But I think the service is to the shareholders.
Yeah, well, so, okay, great point on the shareholder end. I think, great, wonderful for the shareholders. But I want to point something out, Phil. Magic has never been as expensive as it is now, and it will never be as cheap as it is now in the future. So every time a new set comes out that does like well-ish, it's going to end up being the best-selling set ever, right? Like
Zach.
Now I'm not saying for every single set that happens, but because the price of MSRP doesn't actually really exist for Wizards, they can set their costs at whatever, and every time they pay too much money for an IP, they get to be like, well, yeah, it's going to be $10 for booster packs this time. Oh, it's $20 for Spider-Man packs. Oh, for Avatar, it's $40 for a pack. They can repeat that as much as they want, and for right now, they're going to be able to replicate that success. But eventually, you're going to get to a point where the scalpers can't sell to real people, and they're only selling to their scalpers. And eventually, when that dries up and someone's left holding the bag on a set, the scalpers will walk away from trying to do that. Scalpers are the only things holding up, in my opinion, are the only thing actually holding up the economy that is Universes Beyond.
When you say eventually, what is the time frame on that? Is eventually like before we're dead, or is...
I think within 5 years. I think, honestly, it's within the 5-year window. Now, we could technically say the era of Universes Beyond started whenever The Walking Dead started, because that was the first thing. But I think right now, we're in the specific era of like, they've included it in Standard. It's almost a mandatory product if you want to play competitively, right? It's not just like, ooh, fun treatments on cards. This is like what you have to do. Now, I think in 2 years, you'll see a significant drop-off, but I think in 5 years, we will have moved beyond doing Universes Beyond and anything but like a secret layer that's like a fun, like, we made some Ghostbusters cards, or, or like the reprints of staples with like a skin on them, like the Princess Bride stuff, which to me, totally fine. If you want to do stuff like that, Wizards, great. Make the game more accessible through reprints. I love that. But the like, hey, we're doing a Spider-Man set that like, so let me explain something about the Spider-Man set, Phil, because I don't think a lot of people understand this. Do you remember the Big Score and the other things that were like the additional, like
Yes.
extra, like the extra expansion of a set that they were doing for a while? All of this stuff was designed around about the same time. And what happened was nobody wanted to buy it, whatever the thing before the Big Score was, because they included Big Score into the booster packs. They were like, oh, that didn't work. So now the Big Score is them fixing it. But there was something before that was like a set that Aftermath, right? Aftermath.
Yes.
So March of the Machines and then March of the Machines Aftermath. And people were like, no thanks, right? I'll opt out of that, right? And I think this caused a real problem because they had bought a lot of these IPs already. And they're like, we're going to do these cool like additional sets. But the business model didn't work. No one wanted that stuff.
I wonder if that business model would have worked if Aftermath was just UB and not like,
Perhaps.
why didn't you just
but
put
we
these
can
cards
tell
in the
you
set?
that they didn't give that a try because that's what Assassin's Creed was supposed to be. So they were going to do Assassin's Creed like that. No one said that out loud, but like that's what Assassin's Creed was. It was a big score style thing that they were like, here's 100 cards. And I can tell you, we don't hear a lot about that set. No one's like, ooh, man, Assassin's Creed, best-selling Magic set of its time.
Well, because
like,
that set
people
was
largely ignored Assassin's Creed.
But that was also pointed at, like, you know, the best card in the set was like the commander that also had a 5-color activated ability or whatever to, you know, make it so, you know, like it was clearly pointed. Like, I think that not only was that set like, you know, like they had some reasonable cards in there, but I think that one was clearly like, oh yeah, we are pointing this at you guys, modern players, but really this is commander.
So to that point, though, Phil, that was a direct to modern set, I guess. But to that point, we're talking about Spider-Man here, right? So the Aftermath, like, proved that wouldn't work. Big score, they added it to a packs, and it was like fine. No one cared one way or the other, really. Occasionally, you get some weird, fun cards that were like a little extra rare, but like they didn't get to take that 100-card set and resell it to us in something else. So they didn't like that, and they were like, well, we got to separate it again and like make our money on this. So when they did it with Assassin's Creed, it kind of failed, right? And so with Spider-Man, and to a lot of people thinking Spider-Man was supposed to be one of those sets that was going to be like an Aftermath set. And when they found out that wasn't a business model that would work, and they didn't want to piss Marvel off because Marvel's a huge IP, we didn't sell any of your product because no one wanted it, right? They were like, well, we'll jam it into standard and make people have to buy it, right? But it was only supposed to be like 100-ish card set because that's what those sets are. Like, you know, it's like 50 to 100 extra cards, right? Well, then they started jamming a bunch of. They were like, crap, if we got to make this into a standard set, it's got to be more than 100 cards, right? Like, it's got to be at least like what Homelands is. And so they jammed a bunch of random designs into this, and that's where you get like Spider-Man for like United Kingdom Spider-Man, which is like, what? You know, you get all these random things that like don't make any sense. Even if you're a fan of the movies and the comics, you're like, what is this for? You know, like, so you basically it's already kind of showing that like they have to jam this into standard so that people will buy stuff like this, right? Because for that particular idea, it wasn't working. So this is going to be, and if you look at like you look at the professor's videos and stuff like that on the secret layers and stuff, all the secret layers are like literal a fraction of the price of the actual of what they're charging you for the cards that they're reprinting. And again, like that's secret layers. You could argue that like having a Venom, a Tendrils of Agony is worth the $30 or whatever that you have to spend on getting it. But I say all that to say this: they've already failed with a major release, and I don't think that the Spider-Man set is going to be that impactful on standard either. So a lot of people are going to skip it if they can, just because they're not interested in Spider-Man by themselves, you know, and the cards are not actually powerful enough to make it into competitive play. So now they're like, well, you know, if you're a commander player, yeah, maybe you make your Spider-Man card. For the people that came into the game, right, that entered Magic the Gathering because they like Spider-Man, which I think is a very small percentage of people that just want to play Spider-Man, they buy all their Spider-Man cards, they build their Spider-Man deck with all the Spider-Man. They even have the Cosmic Spider-Man that has all 5 colors, so you can jam every freaking card that you want in there. And you know what happens, Phil? They put it on their shelf and they bring it out unchanged every time they want to play with their Spider-Man deck with their friends, right? Or their friends that play Magic are like, hey, we're having a commander night. And they basically treat it like a board game and they never touch Magic the Gathering again, right? That's my biggest retractor for the Universes Beyond Age, actually, is that it doesn't actually attract people to play the game. It just creates people who buy the product short term and treat it like a board game, like they would anything, you know, like Monopoly with Spider-Man on it, right? Like I have plenty of things that are like spin-offs of whatever for like other things, like, you know, that you just buy and you're like, yeah, I have this thing that is the version of that thing, but like it's got this skin on it. The Monopoly is the best example, right? Or like a Legend of Zelda thing. I love Legend of Zelda. I'm not going to start playing Yu-Gi-Oh if they do a Legend of Zelda set. I just won't. I'm not interested in that. Or if it's hard to come up with an idea that, like, I'm a giant Zelda fan, right? So if they did some sort of non-Zelda video game thing that you could buy, I might be interested. I might even pick one up. But I'm not going to be actively buying that product. And so after like, let's say Funko Pop, right? After Funko Pop makes its next thing that's not Zelda related, I'm not fucking buying Funko Pops, dude. I don't care about Funko Pops. I cared about Zelda. And that's, I think, how people feel about Universes Beyond when they come into Magic the Gathering with it. They're like, what do you mean I'm not getting more Spider-Man cards? I'm not getting more Final Fantasy cards, right? I guess I'll never play this game again. Or they play it with a couple of people that they know occasionally that play Magic, which they probably don't hang out with a lot because Magic players hang out with other Magic players. So it's like getting invited to your friend's Commander night and you've only just started with Final Fantasy. You either get hooked in that thing, or once a year when your friend invites you over to his Commander night and you're like, oh, I'll go this time. You bring out that deck and you're like, cool, I'll play that. Now, Commander's an interesting example of this stuff because power level doesn't actually matter. It's just social bullying people into playing what you want them to play. More Commander hate from the channel. But there you actually have a situation where, like, people can be like statically only invested in Final Fantasy and it's fine for them, right? But with Magic players that want to get in, that they want to get into like Standard and stuff like that, they're just stuck. You have to buy it and you have to play it. Fine. But eventually you get to a point where it's too expensive to continue chase raring the Final Fantasy set. And they're printing cards that are ostensibly broken to sell the set. Like Vivi is a classic example, right? Like everyone wants a Vivi. Vivi is like, what does Vivi cost right now? Let's just give it a quick look. $50? Jesus Christ.
Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is the best deck building website on the internet. You can find all of my and Phil's decks in links below, including decks from this episode. And if you do, you'll be directly supporting the channel.
I don't know. That's my guess off the top.
Vivi costs, there it is, $35 is the cheapest.
So 35 is probably a dip because the ban announcement where they said, "Hey,
probably going to ban it." Right?
We are anticipating." Like, do you remember when Nadu broke?
Nadu was like $15 at one point. Now it's like $2, maybe.
Yeah. But when
50 cents.
So Nadu broke the PT, and then right after, like during and after the PT, Nadu's price tanked. It cratered, but it hadn't been banned yet because everybody just knew that it was coming, and so they just offloaded as soon as possible before it happened.
Everyone. It's funny that, like, we live in a world where, like, a card can do well at a Pro Tour and spike its price, right? But if it does too well, you're like, okay, it's, it tanks it. But that's what I'm saying is so they're printing cards for these sets that are either no one needs to buy them, right? In the case of Spider-Man, because they're not good, because they designed this in a half-assed way, and we're like, let's just jam it into a standard set, create 80 more cards, and we'll make it work, right? And so people have to buy it, but they don't really, because it's not even a draftable set, which is wild. They're gonna have a Pro Tour this weekend, and you're not even drafting the set that just came out the same week as the Pro Tour. That's never happened before. That is just more proof that the design flaw here. But so they print these cards, right? They get really expensive, right? And they become this like thing, like they inflate the price of the packs. No one can afford, as a casual person, you can't afford to just be like, oh, I'd like to enjoy Final Fantasy, so I'll buy some Final Fantasy packs. They're marked up 3 to 4 times the price of the thing, especially on release weekend when the most people, just like a YouTube video, when you release a YouTube people, that's when the most people know about it, the most people get in, right? It's the same thing with dropping a Magic set. That's when the hype is the biggest, the most people come in. And when the most people are looking at it and going, I have to spend half my paycheck on this to be able to do it, like, why would I do that? Oh, Magic's not for me. That's I feel like that's what a lot of people, okay, like maybe I'll get one and put it in a jewel case for later on or whatever. I talked to my little brother who has played Magic, and I told him about the Final Fantasy set. He's like, oh, I'm going to pick up a couple boxes of that. That sounds cool. And I'm like, well, the boxes are $800, Brian. And he was like, are they crazy? I'm not buying that. It's like, he's the target audience for like a Final Fantasy set. And he was like, no, like I haven't played Magic in years. I'm not going to start playing again because specifically because it's too expensive.
They have to
It
do
would
some
have been
amount,
fun to play with my wife, you know?
some amount of their calculus though is like, okay, if a box typically costs like what, $100? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never bought boxes. $100?
$130.
$130. Okay, so that would mean what? Every 5, you would need what? 6 people? 6 people to buy
To
boxes
draft.
at 130.
Oh, okay. 6 people. Yeah.
At 130, if 6 people buy $130 boxes versus the one person that buys the $800 box, so you need fewer people.
Yeah. Well, here's what's happening with that, Phil, is people are buying those $800 boxes, and then they're flipping them for $1,600 on the open market, right? Like the scalpers are actually creating a little bit of the problem for WotC because they're buying these things and then inflating them on eBay, and then people like me see it and they're like, not me specifically, but like they're like, ooh, I could buy a box and then put it on eBay. Eventually, someone gets left holding the bag because it's not. There's no Black Lotuses in those boxes, you know, like you're not going to get anything that maintains that value over the course of time. And what happens is when people start seeing that, like, oh, I spent $800 on this box of Spider-Man cards that aren't even like, they're playable in standard, but you wouldn't, you know, $800. And then you watch all the singles just drop in value because no one wants them because they're not playable. And they're not particularly collectible. Like you're like, oh, okay, yeah, the one with this Spider-Man or whatever. For a little while, they have them, like the Chocobo cards, where they make them, you know, artificially rare and stuff like that. Those exist, but eventually you get to a point where people don't care about that stuff unless they're specifically collectors or they are. And so what ends up happening is it gets too expensive. Someone gets left holding the bag, and eventually that doesn't repeat over the course of time. You get people go, I got fooled last time. I'm not gonna spend $1,600 on Final Fantasy product. That like you can only chase that dream so many times, right?
I think I'm going to be your devil's advocate here. I'm going to poke some holes.
Sure.
If they are like, one of the things that you said about like the Spider-Man thing is like, it's going to be like a board game because they're never going to print more Spider-Man cards. Why couldn't they?
Well, it costs money for their license.
Right, but why?
So
if they were like, well,
okay,
more Spider-Man cards are just going to generate more money. Why don't we?
Spider-Man like in 5 years or something like that, right?
We go back to Innistrad and to Ravnica and to, you know, like, why wouldn't they? They could just like, they have working relationships with like the people who like the estate of like Tolkien's estate for Lord of the Rings.
I would love that. I would love to see them go back. I don't think they will because it's expensive every time they do it. And they can leverage the success of right now. They can leverage the success of Universes Beyond to other companies that are desperate to get that like bump of money, and they can say, well, you know, we paid Lord of the Rings this much, but that's Lord of the Rings. You're Garfield. Garfield only gets this much, you know, and so they can continue to do stuff like that and pay less and less and less, and the quality of the product gets worse and worse and worse. Oh, what are we seeing right now with Spider-Man? The product quality is worse and worse and worse, right? Then you get to a point where, okay, now I want to do that, you know, Lord of the Rings 2 set, right? So we go to Lord of the Rings and we say, hey, you know, they're like, yeah, well, it's gonna be X amount, which is a little more than the last time. And they're like, oh, we don't like that. Like their bottom line is all they care about. So if they have to spend more money for something later on, I guarantee WotC is like, no, we'll walk away from that. Well, I'm sure they're already in talks for like a second Final Fantasy or a second Lord of the Rings. And they've probably already been in a situation where they're like, well, it did really well for us. And they're like, well, that's great. Since it did so well for you, spend more on us. And they're probably like doing the calculus and they're like, well, we can make more money doing like the Calvin and Hobbes set if it has the same amount of money that comes in and we spend less on that license. I don't think they'll ever go back to a second UB in my guess, unless
Zach,
it's owned by Hasbro already.
What if instead of buying an $800 box, everybody that would have done that just buys Hasbro stock?
And then the stock buybacks happen and Hasbro still gets to do its own thing. So that's one section, right? Like the idea that those players don't stay, right? How many people, Phil, how many people do you know that came to Magic the Gathering from Fortnite? That were like, ooh, Fortnite, I love Fortnite.
The thing is that I'm
don't know
not
any
part of
Fortnite
that scene,
players,
so
right?
I wouldn't,
Sure.
like, we could walk into Eternal Weekend and half that room could be Fortnite and I
gonna
wouldn't
tell
know
you-
a single thing.
I'm going to give you an anecdote. My nephew loves Fortnite. It's his like life. That's just
Dude,
that's what he does.
when I recognized when Fortnite was like the craze, like initially, and they were like, you know, giving the world champion like $3 million or whatever
Sure,
on the
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and it was like this huge, like epic esports, whatever. I was like, oh man, this is just Survivor.
Yeah.
Like they took Survivor and gamified it into a video game and like gave it like cool graphics and stuff. And then it was like, how about we all collectively, knowing we're gonna have to kill each other for one of us to win, but what if we all stick it together to like survive the majority of this battle, and then we'll figure it out from there. Like I was like, oh, this is literally the game is Survivor, and they just put it into, you know, Call of Duty.
Game rules, logic, all that stuff aside, my nephew would not take the secret layer that I bought for him. He was like, he left it in the house, and then
They don't
like
want a
a
boogie
month
bomb, bro.
later, my dad goes, "Hey, did you want to come pick up your magic cards?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "There's like a white box here that says secret layer magic cards on it." And I was like, "That's Noah's." He's like, "Oh, Noah doesn't want it."
Dude,
Like the literal target audience getting the product for free. The person that would be the number one person to get this thing. How much did they spend on that Fortnite license, right? Like a non-zero amount of money. And you know how many new players came to the game? Fucking almost none, I bet.
well, I think like if you were to
Because it
plug
wasn't
any of the
Fortnite.
holes,
They're not playing Fortnite, you know?
Any
Like
of-
they're playing.
any of the holes that would be plugged into these notions is what is going to make them the most money. I don't think WotC gives a fuck like about whether or not like they're how many players are retaining.
I think that's
like,
the only thing they care about.
maybe the people who are designing the cards, but not the people who are making the
I
calls
think
on
the
like what
people
cards
at
are
the
being
top
designed.
Only care about market share, and if they're not maintaining that market share and not getting that money for selling out those things and then creating new customers, like then I think they should care. I mean, maybe
I
they
think,
don't,
like,
but like they
if,
should.
If you and I are in that room and negotiating, like, hey, what is the thing that we should do next? Like, if you're thinking, okay, well, player retention is just going to be able to, you know, generate us more money going long, and you're like, I'm not interested in going long. I'm interested in getting the most money as soon as possible because I have a quarterly call that I have to like talk to the shareholders to and tell them that like we, you know, increased by 20% after laying off part of our workforce. So like from the POV of like it has to grow at an obscene rate always forever at the cost of whatever, even if it's, you know, a net negative going long. That's always
this is
going
the thing
to be the call,
is that I
right?
don't think that the people who are in charge right now of WotC will really be in charge of WotC in the next like 5-6 years. I think that they're going to get their golden parachutes. They're going to move on. You know, like I bet Chris Cox isn't with WotC in the next 3 years. I bet.
I mean,
right?
he
like,
is if Final Fantasy just generates them $250 million
I think
in
he's
a
just
day.
going to be done. Like, but Phil, you get to a point where you make enough money that you're like, I don't need to work anymore.
Dude, if that were the case, then like everybody that has fuck you money would not be doing the things that they do anymore.
And you also get to a point where if you do this level of success, that level of success is expected year in and year out, and you get to a point of just like you can't keep going up. You eventually have to plateau, and when you plateau, they're like, that's failure. You know, and so either because of that or because he's like, I'll just leave now, riding the high, right? I think that the people in charge will eventually move on to another thing, and they'll find some other thing that they can do to that level as well. We'll see if that bears out. But I want to talk about my kind of final thing, and it's the theory that like there are only so many people. Like we talked about the Venn diagram in that episode about why I think Magic needs its eternal formats. I think there's a Venn diagram of like there's a pie chart, let's say, right? First, of people that will like buy Magic the Gathering, right?
And if you're listening to this podcast while making pie,
yeah,
like we are also corporified and need money. So head on over to patreon.com/eternaldurdles and give us some coin. That way we can compliment you on how good you are about making pie and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're listening to these episodes every single day, and you're agreeing with us, you're disagreeing with us, you're getting in the comments, you know, any of that stuff. If we're giving you value every day, what's $5 a month to you? Go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles and get this content ad free. You don't have to get the ads from YouTube. You won't get any of our sponsor ads either. You just get straight content
Think
over
about
over
how
on Patreon.
we aren't going to, sell out and then make our Patreon tiers more expensive
It'll never happen.
because, we bring guests on.
Yeah. But so to that end, Phil, I want to talk about like the concept of like what is the actual, like, there are a number of people in the world, this pie chart, right? From that pie chart, a certain number of them will actually play Magic the Gathering, or well, let's actually remove that part. They will buy Magic the Gathering cards. There's a certain number of people that just will and will not, right? Take that will, right? So let's just take that slice of the pie right there. Those people will buy Magic the Gathering, but they'll only buy it when they're they'll only at least get involved when their IP of choice gets named, right? Final Fantasy, right? So those people aren't monoliths. Like, I don't only like Magic the Gathering, Phil. I like Legend of Zelda. You like Super Mario, I like the Phillies, right? People aren't monoliths. They have several different things that they're into, right? And so when Magic does like a Final Fantasy set, that's great. All those Final Fantasy people see Magic for the first time. Let's say they do a Legend of Zelda set. Let's just go with that, right? A non-zero number of those people for the Legend of Zelda set saw it, but they also saw it because they're Final Fantasy people too, right? Now, from that amount, some of those people go, ooh, it's got my thing. I'm going to keep going, right? Some people go, well, they'll never put out another version of that again because they didn't with the Final Fantasy stuff. So, like, I'm good, And you get more and more of that over time because more and more and more of those fandoms get served with Universes Beyond. They get to a point where, like, oh, the Transformers set. Cool, I'm going to buy some Transformers cards. And they're like, well, where the hell are those? I didn't see any more Transformers. If you're getting into this because of an outside IP and you never see more of that outside IP, or it comes intermittently in your case where you're like, they could do the reprint. Let's say they do the reprint, right? You're not going to do one every year, A second Spider-Man set's going to come out in 2035. They just don't care to stay into the game if they don't get into the game for reasons that are the game. If they get involved,
I wonder how much though then is like how much do we put the weight on the game being enjoyable?
I think you should put a lot onto that. Otherwise, what are we doing? Why aren't we selling baseball cards?
Well, that's what I mean.
Right?
Like you're saying, like
Hasbro, right?
You're saying, well, like they aren't going to print any more Spider-Man, and I'm a Spider-Man person, so like I'm out.
If you only came in for Spider-Man, you'll never be back.
But like, I think part of it too is like, well, if they come in, they play the game, and they're like, oh, this game is sweet as hell. Like I'm gonna get into the, like
Phil. Let me talk to you about Pokemon, the collectible card game. You know how many children know how to play Pokemon
right now?
I'm just not like, I don't want an actual number. Every child I've ever talked to about Pokemon, I don't really know how to play Pokemon, but I understand the basic concepts. Every time I watch two kids play Pokemon, they're just throwing cards at each other. They're just like, dude, my guy's more powerful than yours. They don't get involved. My point is, they don't get involved with Pokemon because of the amazing gameplay. They get involved with Pokemon because of that IP, right? If Pokemon stopped doing Pokemon and they started doing Fortnite or Final Fantasy or something like that, kids wouldn't keep buying those cards. They would skip those cards specifically. A lot like Magic the Gathering players don't want to necessarily have those cards involved in their game.
So what you're saying is that we really just need, Jace to become Ash Ketchum, and Tezzeret to be Gary.
Well, they tried that. They tried that with Strixhaven, right? That was
no, Strixhaven was Harry Potter.
Conspiracy theory here is they tried that concept with Strixhaven, where they were like, we can put Harry Potter into Magic the Gathering, but we don't actually have to get the IP. We'll do this. And I think that was actually kind of a success because people who were like vaguely aware of what Magic was, that liked the Harry Potter concept, might have stayed around because the set was actually pretty sweet. But I don't think that if they'd have done a Harry Potter set, that one, it would have been as widely regarded by the fans, or that the people who loved Harry Potter and came in because it was Harry Potter would have stuck around. I think you get a very laser focused amount of people who stick around because it's like Harry Potter for Strixhaven. And then you lose out on the people, on the other hand, if you do a Harry Potter set, because they're like, well, they didn't do any more of that. Why am
You
I
know
here?
something that it makes me think, I'm surprised that if they wanted to dabble in this first before buying, expensive IPs. Like, I don't know if that actually is like a bottleneck on them. They're like, oh yeah, everything has to be expensive because we have to pay more for these IPs that we know
it just
everybody.
keeps like they.
I'm
think Magic would have had to pay a bunch of money for Marvel in 1997. Marvel was about to sell to.
I'm just surprised that they didn't
anyone.
they didn't go or experiment with public domain, like known public domain IPs before going into stuff that they would have to pay a ton for.
Well, I mean, they kind of do. Like, look at like Legends has like some of these like Cthulhu kind of monsters and stuff in them.
But like they didn't like print Sherlock Holmes.
No, but they did have Shakespeare.
They didn't print actual factual Dracula.
And it is
like,
funny
they put it
that
as
like
a skin. They put it as a skin. But they didn't be like, hey, we're going to build the Dracula set with the Dracula storyline.
And that cost them nothing because Dracula's public domain.
Because it's public domain. That's what I'm saying.
But
like, they
it's
put
funny how
Markov
other
as a Dracula, but they didn't build like, oh, we're going to do the Dracula set and market it as Dracula. And that's going to, like, I don't know. Like, that seems like they could have done that.
It's a smart point, and it's a point that a lot of other card games have fed on. Like, if you look at Overpower used to be DC versus Marvel. And it went full public domain. You get like John Carter of Mars versus Carson of Venus versus Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu versus King Arthur, right? That's the whole game is just public domain heroes, right? You still get the same effect. That's like, who would win in a fight, Sherlock Holmes or King Arthur, right? Like, that's a cool, like, kind of, fun thing to do in that game specifically. But if you look at Sorcery's second set was Arthurian Legends. They took a completely open source public domain thing and made it into part of their world, which they could do.
Yeah, I mean, Arabian Nights was
that, right?
Yeah. But
successful set.
It's more interesting that like if they wanted to go into continue doing like that sort of thing with other IPs, like they could just do it into stuff that like also has a ton of clout. I mean, probably wouldn't sell as well as something like the big haymakers, but like would still generate something if they were like, we are just going to lean on this world instead. There's like infinite of that. I don't want to spiral into that.
Yeah,
like,
no. I mean, I would love to spiral into that. Maybe in another episode, we'll talk about what public domains that Magic the Gathering should be exploiting.
Alquist Proft out of Murders of Karlov Manor was essentially the Sherlock, right? But like,
yeah. Well, with that said, what do you guys think? Do you think that Universes Beyond will still be around in the way it is in 5 years? Or do you think it'll be more in the way that I was explaining, where it's like, like the Fortnite set, where you just get like a little dash of a couple of cards, that kind of thing? And what IP from the public domain would you like to see in Magic the Gathering? Hit us up in the comments. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button.
You can also support us on patreon.com/EternalDurdles, which now offers the new Deck Donation tier.
During July, the Deck Donation patrons will get a 2-for-1 special, where both Phil and I will run your deck through a league.
I'll play literally whatever you want.
So brew your spiciest or stock us up with a stock list.
I'll literally play whatever you want.
Thanks for watching.